I read my first Thomas Pynchon novel called The Crying of Lot 49. And honestly, this book, it's very short, but it blew my mind and broke my mind because Thomas Pynchon is one of those postmodernist authors who really makes you think. A lot of the scholarly folks like to read him. And this is my first novel of his, of course. It's only about 150 to 170 pages. And I'm into conspiracy stuff. Like, I really like the book Chaos. It was written by Tom O'Neill. It was about the Marilyn Manson cult and the undercover government agencies using drugs on the populace. I love that book. I was fascinated by that book. This kind of dives into conspiracies. This book was written, I think, in 1964 or 1965. And I think it, for the most part, it was very fun to read. You have to think. And for the first 70% of the book, I was in there. I was invested. But the last 30% of the book is where I started to really be like, okay, what's happening? And apparently I looked it up. This is normal for Thomas Pynchon. Not all of his books are cut and dry. Not everything comes to closure. It's normal for Pynchon's books to have loose ends and not really ever coming to a conclusion. I had to look this up for myself because, like I said, around 75% of the book, I start to get confused a little bit. And it turns out that that's normal when you're reading Thomas Pynchon. And this is his shortest book. It's considered, a favorite by many Thomas Pynchon fans. A lot of people liked it. I started with it because it was available at the library and it was rather short. So I thought I'd get a decent feel of Thomas Pynchon by reading it. And I think I did. He's definitely an author you have to follow through with and pay attention, or you're going to get lost. One of those kinds of authors. I think Cormac McCarthy, he's also a postmodernist author-ish, and he's easier to understand, in my opinion, than Thomas Pynchon. But Thomas Pynchon's most famous book is Gravity's Rainbow, and a lot of people like it. It's very thick. I think it's like 800 pages or something like that. So I might delve into that. But I'm also a person, when I read, I like to read for pleasure. I don't like to have to think a whole lot when I'm reading for pleasure. I like to read to transform my soul. And a good example of that is Crime and Punishment. Dostoevsky's considered a difficult author, but I read Crime and Punishment just fine. You had to pay attention to the whole book, but you had to definitely pay close attention to the details of Crime and Punishment. But I felt it was intellectually one of the best novels that I've ever read. Dostoevsky's one of the best authors of all time. Thomas Pynchon, I'm not a huge fan of his style in terms of, like I said, I like to be transformed when I read, but I also like to read for entertainment. Another good example of what I just said is Charles Dickens. His novels, very wordy because they got paid by the word at that time. That's why he apparently, from what I read, would write extra words because you got paid by the word. Charles Dickens transformed the world. He transformed how governments help poverty. His books were transformative, but they didn't require too much in-depth thinking. You didn't need like a Sherlock, magnifying glass to decipher it, which, by the way, is also another great tale of series. Another great series, The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes by Conan Doyle. Phenomenal. Way ahead of its time. But back to The Crying of Lot 49. I'm glad I read it. I'm glad I got a good feel of Thomas Pynchon. I think I'm definitely better for having read it, even though the ending kind of leaves it up in the air. I don't want to get into big spoilers, but you find this out rather quickly. The main protagonist, her late husband passed away, and she goes to find out about his estate, and she is bombarded with this trumpet symbol everywhere. Everywhere she goes, this trumpet symbol appears, whether it's on advertisements, on letters, and she finds out, is this some kind of a joke? Am I going crazy? Or did my ex-husband have something to do with this possible alternate postal service? And this is where you find out about that without getting into big spoilers. Is she going mad? Or is it a coincidence or not a coincidence? And I thought that was great about the book. The first 75% of the book had me. Last 20-something% you had to definitely think about it more in depth. But overall, I'm glad I read this book. Let me know in the comments what you think of The Crying of Lot 49. I'm curious to know your thoughts, truly. And feel free to subscribe to this channel where I plan on doing more book reviews, television show reviews, and movie reviews, and just pop culture talk in general. Right now I'm reading Something Wicked This Way Comes by Ray Bradbury, and I hope to do a book review of that as well. But The Crying of Lot 49 definitely made me think, and it was it a conspiracy? Was it true? You know, where is this postal service? Is it real? What, you know, you all come to these conclusions. That's not a big spoiler. And, you know, let me know in the comments what you thought of The Crying of Lot 49. What's your favorite Thomas Pynchon novel? I'm curious to know. Let me know in the comments. But definitely a book that'll kind of break your brain, but I'm glad I read it at the same time. One of those types of books. I think he's definitely unique and fascinating in his own way. And if you're into conspiracies and postmodern language, then I think you'll like this book. Thank you so much for watching. If you made it this far, hope you guys have a great rest of the week. Thanks for watching.